Hagar, it feels like things over the past while have been playing into Russian hands in the sense that it's been able to continue selling energy. Putin has been killing off dissidents of all kinds. How is this affecting the geopolitical position from here?
Well, you have it right here, but let's look at it from two angles. On one hand, when you see Russia crack down this way, you've had, like you said, you have Alexei Navalny's killing. You have also, by the way, the arrest of the the U.S. Russian resident who was in Russia, who was arrested for giving a donation to a Ukrainian charity. You have the fact that there was a Russian defector who was killed mysteriously in Spain. All of these things point to a crackdown that's meant to instill fear in the Russian citizens, but also is reflective of Putin's insecurity on how he feels on his grip on power. At the same time, you have what's happening on the ground in Ukraine, which is a little bit worrisome because Putin is watching the fact that you have this Ukraine aid bill stuck in the House because Speaker Johnson won't bring it to a vote on the House floor, even though a majority of Democrats and nearly half of Republicans support it. But when he's seeing that, he feels empowered. And we already saw the effects of that play out when Ukraine withdrew from the city of Avdiivka last week. Russia took control over that, and that portends some concerns for how strong Ukraine is on the ground.
You know, Hagar, we saw the administration saying a couple of things simultaneously today, and we saw the president out today talking about this. One of the things they're saying is that these sanctions are working. They're very effective. They're actually lowering Russia's resources and increasing resistance of Putin's ability to fight a war. But we're also seeing them say, you know, we're still going to do more. This is not the end of what we can do. And you wonder where the outer limit is for all this, because it doesn't seem to really stop Putin's ability to wage war in Ukraine, as you just laid out. What about the ideas of going after Russian sovereign funds that are frozen outside of Russia now, confiscating those, giving those to the Ukrainians? That's something that the U.S. has been reluctant to do. And then what about Vladimir Putin's personal assets? We seem to be reluctant to go there for national sovereignty reasons. When is the time when the United States will say, you know what, we have to do this?
All right, so let's go backwards from your questions. The first about Vladimir Putin. Putin himself was sanctioned by the United States individually on February 25th, 2022, the day after Russia invaded Ukraine. So any assets he has within U.S. jurisdiction would already be frozen, and U.S. persons, that means businesses and individuals, are prohibited from doing business with him. And then that unleashes market forces around the world. So banks around the world, businesses around the world that are on the side of Ukraine and the West in general are not going to want to do business with him for that reason. So you have that part. But the part that you're talking about, the $300 million in reserves at the Federal Reserve that are frozen, Russia's reserves, this is a controversial move that the U.S. is currently debating and Congress is currently debating. They're debating whether to seize those assets and give them to Ukraine for rebuilding efforts and repatriation. And it's controversial, it's unprecedented, and it's controversial because it's never been done before, but also because it could risk countries' faith in buying the U.S. dollar and putting them in reserves at the Federal Reserve Bank. And that's a big source of strength for our currency. And if that strengthens our currency, that in turn strengthens our sanctions as well. So it's a very controversial move. I'm not exactly sure where they'll go with that, but it is very controversial, and I expect that decision-making to go on for a while. And I'll make one final point on the strength of sanctions, which is that sanctions are meant to work over a long period of time. And every time you sanction a target, it's like a game of whack-a-mole. They always find a loophole or another way to evade sanctions. And Russia did that here. And that's the importance of today's package, is that they've sanctioned these enablers in countries like China and the UAE that have helped Russia receive technology and other goods to support their war machine in Ukraine, to refurbish equipment and tanks and things of that kind. And so at the beginning, this was really working. Last year, because of U.S. and Western sanctions, Russia had lost 9,000 pieces of equipment, but they did a workaround. They started receiving ammunition and weapons from North Korea and Iran. And so this is meant to get at that as well.